Have you ever thought about what makes a Mario game fun? This has been a question that's been lingering in my mind for a little while, so I decided to take the time to make this video. I split it up into 3 categories, which I think contribute to the overall experience we have with these games. This video is intended to talk about the strong points of what 3D Mario games offer, but also the flaws. It's pretty obvious that Mario wouldn't be the game that we love without the levels and worlds that have been designed. Whether it's Bianco Hills in Mario Sunshine, Gusty Gardens in Mario Galaxy, and New Donk City in Mario Odyssey, Nintendo always amuses people with the worlds they create. These worlds are meant for Mario to run, jump, and spin around in. And these worlds are meant for anyone to pick up and just have fun. And when it comes to learning mechanics easily, I think Mario 3D World does this really well. I don't think many of us remember everything that 3D World had to offer, but one thing that stands out to me has just got to be how the levels are designed. If you ask me, Mario 3D World is when Nintendo struck the true gold mine of platforming game design. If you remember the level Cakewalk Flip, it just seems like a normal Mario level. You've got your enemies, your platforming, the upbeat music, and so on. But if you were to go back and play it again, maybe you would have noticed something. The flip panels in this level are one of the examples of Nintendo's level design goldmine that I mentioned. It's called, Kishotenketsu? And it's what Koichi Hayashida, the co-director of Mario 3D World, decided to use. Kishotenketsu, I think that's how it's said, describes the structure of development for classic Chinese, Korean, and Japanese narratives. It would consist of introducing a character or concept for the setting of a story, the development which would build up to the twist of the story which turns toward an unexpected development, and then the conclusion, which wraps up the story. This is the philosophy that Mr. Hayashida decided to use for Mario 3D World, and it works perfectly. Let's take a look at Cakewalk Flip. When you begin the level, you're introduced to the flip panels in a safe environment for you to experiment with. This would be the introduction of a character or concept in the story. After that, you have a couple of more platforms, but without a floor underneath to save you. This would be the development. The platforms after this would be the development too. Then you're introduced to whatever these things are. They fire lasers that expand in radius. And then, for the twist. These laser things are put on top of the flip panels above an open area, where the risk is high. And finally, for the conclusion, you use the flip panels to get to the top of the flagpole. Cakewalk Flip isn't the only level that has this game design philosophy. This is applied in practically every level in Mario 3D World. It allows for innovation to happen in the levels without making the player feel confused or lost. There's not a need for tutorials to introduce new game mechanics. It's what allows anyone to pick up Mario 3D World and just play. Now, despite how Mario 3D World treats its game mechanics, the game isn't perfect. Getting to the final level, the Crown World, can be pretty tedious. Collecting stamps in the game is completely useless because of... yeah. And there are certain instances of levels being a bit more empty than what would be expected. There are some really cool game mechanics too, which unfortunately are never expanded upon beyond the levels that they're in. Mario 3D World is not the only game that has used this philosophy in game design. There's a game that uses this, and it's not even related to Mario at all. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. When you're chopping down the tree to cross the canyon, figuring out that apples can be roasted by a torch, or rolling a boulder down the hill to hurt some enemies, the design of the Great Plateau is meant to teach the player some of the mechanics and huge possibilities the game has, in a way that feels natural. Simply by laying things out in a certain way, there's no need for huge amounts of text to explain things, and mechanics that get introduced can be innovated as players progress through the game without being confused. Nintendo also does this in their latest Mario platformer, Mario Odyssey. The kingdoms in this game are centered around a select amount of game mechanics, and as the player progresses through the kingdoms and explores more, they become more familiar with how things work, and figure out ways to use what Nintendo has provided to their advantage. 2 examples of this would be the uproots in the Wooded Kingdom, which are used to fight enemies and collect Paramoons, and in the Seaside Kingdom with Gushions, which allow Mario once again to fight enemies and collect Paramoons. However, for older 3D Mario games like Galaxy 1 and 2, things are different. Galaxy 1 and 2 don't exactly treat their game mechanics the same way Odyssey does. It can sometimes lead to a feeling of dissatisfaction. While Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are crammed with lots of little gimmicks, and they're very fun, they never go beyond the 1 or 2 stars you'll see them in. Mario 64 and Sunshine also have this problem too. Most of the time they'll be abandoned in the level they were introduced in. These mechanics that we see in Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy 1 and 2 are easy to understand, and they don't need lengthy tutorials. but they're never used to their full potential. Before Mario 64 released in 1996, Nintendo was faced with a challenge. Many 3D games before Mario 64 were terrible to control. 3D games were still new, and Nintendo needed to figure out how to innovate their controls. They were going from 2D to 3D. Things were obviously going to be difficult. But Shigeru Miyamoto had an idea. In an interview about the development process of Mario 64, when asked about the controls, Miyamoto said this: "Our thinking was that as players got good at the controls, they'd want to try out more and more button combinations. And if there was nothing past the basics, it would be disappointing for them." So what exactly does this mean? Well, when you first played Mario 64 or any 3D Mario game, it's highly unlikely you were completely familiar with all of Mario's moves and how he controls. But as you progressed through the game, you became more familiar with how Mario moves, and you started learning new tricks, like the triple jump or the long jump. Miyamoto wanted to reward players for trying out new things. He didn't want people to feel as if Mario's movements were restricted. Of course, you can get through Mario 64 without learning all of Mario's moves, but for the players who wanted to learn and experiment, they were rewarded. And with the latest installment in the franchise, Mario Odyssey, Mario's moveset has grown even larger. Shigeru's philosophy on controls is what keeps these games alive to this day. Just look at speedrunning.
Please. Please! For the love of fuck!
Nintendo games take up a large portion of the speedrunning community. Dozens of events have been held, heart-racing world records have been set, and countless hours of optimization and research have been done to beat these games as fast as possible. While some of these strategies that we see in speedrunning were not exactly intended by the developers, Miyamoto essentially laid out everything that people needed in order to have countless hours of replayability, and it really is amazing. When I first played through Mario 64, the game took me 12 hours to complete, but with speedrunning, it can only take an hour and 42 minutes, and that's for all 120 stars. Mario Odyssey took me 15 hours to beat, but with speedrunning, that goes down to a mere 58 minutes. And there's subcategories too. Mario 64 has the 120 star, the 70 star, the 16 star, the 1 star, and the 0 star. Yeah, I didn't think that last one was possible either. Sunshine has subcategories too, even for individual levels. The speedrunning community is constantly gaining traction, and it's all thanks to Miyamoto's idea. Of course, controls in 3D Mario games have never been flawless. Something I've disliked is the controls of Mario Galaxy. While the idea of Mario going through space jumping from planet to planet is cool, oftentimes the controls have felt too floaty, and the gravity that we see in certain levels would always throw me off. While some of you would probably think that it's realistic for it to feel floaty, there's many things in this game that don't correlate with realism either, like Mario being able to breathe without a helmet. The art style and music of Mario games are really the icing on the cake. Worlds become alive through Nintendo's use of bright colors, catchy music, and small details. Looking at a galaxy like Gusty Gardens or a kingdom like the Seaside Kingdom, it's apparent that Nintendo took the time to put a lot of care into how the levels look, and put a lot of care into the music accompanied with it. Nintendo's use of a simplistic art style allows for visual cues to be used in order to guide the player in the right direction, such as these impact symbols on the orbs you see to fight Bowser in Mario Galaxy, or tiny little shines of light which can entice the player to figure out something. There's also little pieces of audio we hear in Mario games, and many of us take it for granted. I won't pretend to know the secrets of music in Mario games, but I at least know that certain sounds can tell a player whether what they did was good or bad. Collecting a coin sort of sounds like a ka-ching sound, which is typically just associated with a cash register. And in all honesty, I never really thought about it until a friend of mine pointed it out when I was writing this script. Even the sounds of collecting something as small as a star bit in Mario Galaxy sound sort of empowering. All of these things contribute to a way of Nintendo telling a player what is bad and what is good. The music in these games also contribute to the overall feeling and atmosphere the level has. When playing Gusty Gardens, there's an orchestra to complement Mario soaring from planet to planet and defeating enemies. It reinforces this feeling of positivity and encourages the player. Going into a secret level in Mario Sunshine gives us an a cappella. The music accompanied with the overall look of the level contributes to a feeling of mystery and really makes us wonder what this little world is. While all of this stuff is good, there's a problem. Nintendo has never really moved away from this art style. While this video is meant to be about 3D Mario games, if we were to look at the 4 2D Mario games that Nintendo released in the span of 6 years, One thing is apparent, the art style is very similar. Nintendo never really bothered to go a different direction with how Mario looks. We also see this in Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, Mario 3D World, and Mario Odyssey. For years, many players have wanted Nintendo to at least attempt to go into a different direction with how these games look. It could allow for an even more unique and interesting experience. Think of it this way, let's say Nintendo was a baker, and they gave you a chocolate cake. It's a great cake, it tastes amazing. And then they give you another cake, but it's the same one. And then another one, and then another one, and then another one. These games are great, but they don't look that different from each other. So, there we have it. These are the things that I believe really contribute to the Mario games we love. Without Nintendo's philosophy on game design and ideas, we wouldn't be having fun controlling this little plumber running around in bright and vibrant worlds. The criticism I have about what Nintendo does isn't meant to be taken as hatred. It's meant to be taken as a way to convey what Nintendo could do, to make the perfect Mario game.